Thank you very much. So I would like to talk to you principally today around about tracking gender records and statistics through the Athena Swan Charter, which is something I know many of you know about. And numbers of colleagues here have spoken about already. I want to, if I may, take this opportunity to give a bit more information about it and what our ambition is with regards to that. I'd be delighted if anyone wants to chat more about this afterwards or in the intervals. There's numbers of colleagues here who know a lot about it. My colleagues Sarah Dickinson and Jonathan Gascoigne are here, and Dr. Wafa El Adami from SAGE in Australia is here. Dr. Shirley Malcolm and Dr. Lily Yu from Sea Change in the US are here, and Professor Joyce Wong as well. So, sorry. Dr. Lily Yu is from Japan. I'll come back to that in a moment. Professor Wong from Sea Change is here. So, a little bit first of all, now let me make sure I get this right. There we are. A little bit about ECU and Athena Swan. Equality Challenge Unit, I also like the name, is the UK higher education sector's equality and diversity policy and research agency. We are a charity, we're a not-for-profit, and our mission is to advance equality and diversity for staff and students in colleges, universities, and research institutes. Lots of people do this work, not only in the UK, but across the world, and many of you have been involved in this all of your lives. What I would say about ECU, certainly in the UK context, is that what makes us distinctive is that our work is evidence-based. So we build all of our programs on our qualitative and quantitative research. We were born of the higher education and research sectors. So our focus is on teaching, learning, research, and knowledge exchange. As I mentioned, we're not-for-profit. We're not a regulator, so we're not the equality police. We can't make anyone do anything. So if we have any power, it's soft power. We rely on being a critical friend and on encouraging, supporting, critiquing, but in a gentle, affectionate way where we see difficulties. That's what we do then, a range of non-regulatory initiatives, anything except for making anyone do anything. Athena Swan is probably our most well-known piece of work, and it's one of our two charters. Our charters are built to address chronic issues of underrepresentation. In other words, those areas where various initiatives have not worked comprehensively. So the two we have is Athena Swan, which I will talk about, and a Race Equality Charter, which tries to address the chronic, in other words, long-standing areas of underrepresentation and disadvantage for both staff and students. That's a terrible photo of me, along with colleagues. I look like I'm being tickled. But there's two much better photos of our two patrons, our Athena Swan patrons, Professor Dame Julia Higgins and Professor Sir Paul Nurse, who's one of our Nobel laureates. They are the two Athena Swan STEM patrons. And that's at our 10th birthday anniversary, which I think was a couple of years ago. Please remind me to airbrush myself out of that photo next time. But the other useful information is that it's a recognition scheme of excellence in women's employment in STEM. It's changed a bit, but it's still at its core that. It started in 2005 with 10 university members, and it now has 143 university members, which is virtually saturation. Now, there's a very interesting story behind that, which I'm going to come back to. It also operates in other countries, and I'm going to come back to that as well. Since 2015, we have extended, this is the Athena Swan Charter, and in the UK at least, and this is at the instigation and request of our university, so that it now covers all subject disciplines, not just STEM, so arts, humanities, social sciences, business and law. It also now covers the inclusion of professional and support staff, transgender staff and students, and also increasingly issues of intersectionality, because we know, obviously, that none of us occupy our lives in a siloed identity. We are not just men or just women or just old or just young or just disabled or non-disabled or black or white. We are a multitude of things, and whether you think of disadvantage as being compounded, or whether you think of the intersection as subtle and nuanced and requiring, therefore, careful thought, it's evident, I think, probably for all of us who work in this area, that we can't really address the structural issues of disadvantage and underrepresentation unless we understand the complex nature of our compound identities and how society or societal structures react to that. Now, this is not straightforward, certainly in building a charter that's operable by universities and research institutes. So we iterate the process stage by stage. So now we're beginning to learn and understand what that would mean in terms of significant progress in universities and research institutes, and hence we've built in considerations of intersectionality into the process. There are three, it's an award scheme, the Athena Swan Charter. There are three levels: bronze, silver and gold. That's what's required for bronze. A self-assessment analysis, identifying issues and challenges, and planning activities. For silver, in addition to bronze, you have to have evidence of impact and achievement. And for gold, which is a rare beast, I will tell you, we don't give out gold awards easily, you have to have a significant record of activity and impact, and you must demonstrate that you're a beacon of gender equality and good practice. Gender equality in the UK, but as I will talk a little bit more about, it's building into other areas in other countries. As of May, this is in the UK, you'll see the sort of demographics of this. This is after 12 years of work. There are 81 bronze universities, 13 bronze research institutes, and 378 bronze departments. When you go to silver, it's much less. 13 silver universities, 3 silver research institutes, and 172 silver departments, and only 8 gold departmental awards. And as of yet, no university that has met the very high threshold of being a gold award. And you'll see the key statistic there, which is we operate 2 award rounds per year, at which the Sarah and the Athena Swan team receive between 150 and 200 applications. There is about a 2/3 success rate, and that's almost as it should be. It's not that I want anyone to fail. I want everyone to succeed. In fact, this is not a zero-sum game. It doesn't need somebody to fail in order for somebody else to succeed. But it is a rigorous process. It isn't a tick-box exercise. It isn't something that we will just readily give. And so for there to be a level of not success, I think is almost necessary in order to maintain the rigor. Most, if not all, of those who are not successful come back a year or two later and are eventually successful. But it is important that the rigor is maintained and that it never becomes what we call a tick box exercise that isn't challenging and that isn't demonstrably effective in changing cultures. So what are the benefits and impacts? I'm just going to say a little bit about how things have worked. How it works, it's quite easy. Collect, analyze, identify, take action, repeat. And that is essential. An award lasts for 4 years. You have to then reapply. You cannot rest on your laurels. And we have examples of institutions and departments, including gold award holders, who no longer have them because they didn't continue to make adequate progress over the 4-year period in which they held the award. Again, that's challenging for us because people are not happy, neither are we, and inevitably in these areas there is friction which has to be handled. But it does ensure that it keeps it potent and alive. It's never possible, I think, certainly in chronic areas of underrepresentation and disadvantage, just to think that we've done enough and therefore we stop. Whether it's us at ECU or the institutions and departments that we work with, there needs continuous progress and challenge. It is an individualized approach. It's not a tick box exercise. That doesn't seem to be, hang on. There we are. I think I've probably said all of that. There has to be essentially a commitment to removing barriers that contribute to underrepresentation. And it's a targeted approach, which requires good practice and honesty. And what that means is it's what one institution or one department does to progress the agenda won't necessarily be the same as what another institution or department does, because the particularities of each institution and department are different. Of course there are similarities, and we have talked about those key issues in these past 2 days of effective mentoring and support and career support for academics who are returning from breaks, culture change, how to address male domination in the workplace. They are common issues, clearly, but how that's addressed and played out with won't be the same, and also requires individualized responses depending on the circumstances. Why does it work? It was built by the academic community, essentially. I won't go through the process, but essentially that's why it works. It's a tailored approach, which we continue to try and iterate whenever we can, and progress as we learn and understand what's happening. It requires a commitment to removing barriers. The blue box is what it is, and the gold box is what it isn't. It requires commitment to removing barriers, taking a targeted approach, and good practice and honesty. It isn't about hiring or promoting simply because somebody is underrepresented. It isn't just about producing reports and winning awards. It isn't about suggesting things, it's about doing things. And it isn't about operating a deficit model to understand why there is underrepresentation and disadvantage. We've undertaken 2 evaluations of the Charter, and we're about to commission in the coming months, hopefully, a 3rd independent evaluation to help us learn. Those are some of the findings of the evaluation. I'm going to skip through them because I want to say more about some other things. The 2014 evaluation report, which we commissioned from Loughborough University, found that the awards provide credibility and impetus for the work that was already underway, helped to determine effective evidence of sustainable change, and made positive differences in departments with awards. And what it found was that principally institutions said that they did this because it was the right thing to do. I think that's true, and it's also not true. I think that they do it because certainly in the case of Athena or Swan now, no credible, significant institution wishes to be seen as not interested in this agenda. It's reached that critical mass. So there's a kind of peer requirement nowadays, which is great, frankly. I think it makes a difference. The reviews found evidence of sustainable change. That's critical for us because I, like you, well, at least I'm pretty sure that this is true for all of us, and certainly for everybody in my team. We've come into this work because of some kind of personal experience or commitment to the agenda. I don't think any of us are interested in just playing around the edges. What we really want to do is end oppression, frankly. And sustainable change is key to that. It's as much as we can not about tinkering. And those are some of the benefits that the evaluation found. Some more. Okay. This is, I think, Professor Tom Welton, a quote from him. Tom is a champion of the Charter, and his department, which is the Department of Chemistry at Imperial College London, got a gold award. He talked about, if you need instrumentalist reasons for doing it, he talked about how, in his view, he got increased research funding as a result of participation in the Charter. That is very interesting, I think. Okay, so 2011, I do want to tell you a little story. Many of you know this. January 29th, 2011, about 8:30 a.m. in the morning, I arrived in the office. Most of my team were on holiday. In the UK, most universities, it's when most of their staff are on holiday because it's between semesters, it's between academic years. At that time, I was hoping to catch up on some reading that I hadn't done, do the things that weren't immediate and urgent. Turned up at the office, a couple of my colleagues were there, and the phones were ringing off the hook. What is going on? It turns out that Dame Sally Davis, who is the Chief Medical Officer for England and responsible for allocating hundreds of millions of pounds in medical research money to biomedical research departments in universities, announced that day that she would not give any more money to a biomedical research department at the next award round, which was last year in 2016, unless they were an Athena Swan Silver Award holder. What she said to me subsequently was that she was so sick and tired at facing these serried ranks of men who were asking her for lots of money and hardly any women fronting the applications, even though they were key and instrumental in their departments, that she took legal advice from her government, she's a government officer, and made that decision. It was extraordinary. It was extraordinary in a number of ways. First of all, it caused a minor tornado in the UK higher education sector. A lot of upset, I would say, a lot of upset. And some of that upset was directed at me and my team because the sector thought that we were introducing another regulatory requirement which might deny them funding. As it happens, I had no idea that Dame Sally was going to say this. Thankfully, I had no idea because it meant that I could honestly and sincerely say that it was nothing to do with me. And we run the Charter, but her decision was her decision. The other consequence is that interest in Athena Swan exploded. And as you saw earlier, we now have pretty much saturation in the UK, not just from universities with biomedical research departments that do and seek funding. In fact, there's probably only about 32 of those universities in the UK. But you will have, if you remember, you will have seen that we have 143 subscribing institutions now. And that's because it helped to create this critical mass for all institutions, not just those who wanted the money. Subsequently, other funders have required similar initiatives, and there's reference there to the Welsh National Institute for Social Care and Health Research, the HEA National Review. HEA is the Higher Education Authority of Ireland, and also, what isn't up there, but the Scottish Funding Council sets out their outcome agreements, thank you, for their universities, and they also reference Athena Swan there. There's there's the SFC reference. Royal Society of Edinburgh and Nuffield Council on Bioethics have all referenced Athena Swan as being instrumental in change. So I do want to say one or two things about its efficacy in other jurisdictions, because at the risk of sounding imperious, and heaven forbid that an Englishman should sound imperious, but I think that there is a virtuous circle in this operating in partnership with key strategic institutions in other countries, because we benefit in the UK from understanding how sexism, male domination, and gender inequality, and the intersections with other areas operate, as it were, in other jurisdictions. I think the higher education and research sector as a whole benefits because there's more of a global push for addressing the equality agenda, the broader equity agenda is raised as a result of more and more involvement. So, what's happening elsewhere? Well, ECU, my organisation, was involved in the European Union-funded FP7 initiative with 12 partners, including colleagues from Canada and the US, which found lots of things, very useful things, including the efficacy of Athena Swan. In the Republic of Ireland, it now operates as a result of support from the Higher Education Authority and, of course, Irish institutions. We're delighted to be working with them there. In Australia, WAFA yesterday gave a very helpful talk about that. We operate it there in partnership with the science academies there under the label of SAGE. That's its nomenclature, its recognition there. And we're delighted with that, and we're delighted with the work that's happening there. What next? We're still waiting for our first ever Gold University Award. We won't give it out easily. It will require those things that we talked about. Where next? Potentially Japan, potentially the USA. We're having excellent conversations with colleagues that I mentioned earlier. We're hoping to establish an international advisory group, and there's some conversations that are happening here around that, to help understand and make sure that this doesn't become some kind of neo-imperialist or colonialist initiative, but really benefits all of us. The final thing I want to say is I just want to reference some other work, because apart from Athena Swan, noting, of course, the title of my talk, which includes reference to data collection, we undertook an asset survey of science, engineering and technology last year, which assessed the current experiences, expectations and perceptions of gender equality in STEM in academia and the intersections with ethnicity, sexual orientation and age. This is on our website, I think, but just a couple of findings from our survey. A higher proportion of men had been formally promoted to their current post than women. And women rated holding an Athena Swan Award as the top equality item to consider when deciding to take a post. Now that, I think, is critical if you need to persuade institutions about why they should do this, because it's beginning to have purchase. I know I'm beginning to sound like I'm just a permanent walking advert for Athena Swan. That's not what I'm trying to do, and there are many other initiatives. But I suppose what I want to do is try and convey to you some of the excitement that we have in my team and in those who participate in this, in really trying to address a significant area for which change is long overdue. So I hope that was helpful and interesting. I'm very happy. I don't know if there's time to take questions or catch us in the break, or I'm here till the end of the day before flying back. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David, for that very inspiring story. Actually, I have indication from above that we can accept one question. So if I may go to the back of the room, they haven't gotten any attention so far.
In Science Foundation. I guess my question is really linked to your last slides and the attempts of ECU to spread beyond the UK. At EU level, where is this going? Any developments?
That's a great question. Obviously there's a lot of interest and the numbers of initiatives at the EU level some of which have been talked about in these past 2 days. I think that, and as I mentioned also, we were part of an FP7 European Commission funded initiative, GenderNet. As far as I'm aware, there's no decision by the EU, certainly, to think about launching something like Athena Swan across Europe. That's an ambition which I think would be tremendously exciting, particularly because, well, it's a huge sector with great strength and value, and it would result in effective huge change for underrepresentation and disadvantage. So I think part of the difficulty, frankly, was my country's stupid decision last year to leave the EU, which might not be the case. Sorry, but it was, frankly. An act of self-harm is what it was.
Well, that's why you have reason to be chirpy today.
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes.
Because maybe, who knows, that will be reversed in the coming days and weeks.
Watch this space, yeah.
Watch this space. And thank you again, David.
Thank you.